The words landed like a gunshot in an empty room. "You're not a cowboy, Eastwood, you're a costume with a squint." John Wayne said it loud enough for 30 people to hear. His voice carried that unmistakable weight, deep, deliberate, the kind of voice that had filled movie theaters for 3 decades. He was standing 6 feet away from Clint Eastwood at the Ventura Sporting Club in Burbank, California, on a Saturday afternoon in October 1973. The California sun was still high and bright, cutting hard shadows across the outdoor range. The smell of gun oil and dry grass hung in the warm air, and every single person on that range had gone completely still. For a moment, no one moved. 30 men, competition shooters, weekend regulars, Wayne's personal friends, stood frozen between 2 of the biggest names in the history of Western cinema. Some of them had money on the table. Some of them had driven 40 minutes for what was supposed to be a friendly Saturday exhibition shoot. None of them had expected this. None of them had expected to watch John Wayne, the Duke, the legend, the man who had defined American heroism on screen for 30 years, publicly call out Clint Eastwood in front of witnesses. Clint didn't raise his voice. He didn't step back. He set his Colt revolver down on the range table slowly, with the same quiet deliberateness that had made audiences across the world lean forward in their seats for a decade. Then he turned and looked at Wayne directly, those pale eyes giving nothing away. And he said 5 words. "Make it 50 yards, then." The crowd exhaled as one. Wayne blinked, just once, and in that single blink something shifted. His 2 friends exchanged a glance. The rangemaster looked up from his clipboard. Because 50 yards with a single-action revolver wasn't a counter-challenge. It was something else entirely. It was the kind of answer that told you everything about the man giving it. That he wasn't bluffing, wasn't performing, and wasn't afraid. Wayne had walked across that range looking to put a young upstart in his place. Instead, he had just been handed a dare that even his closest friends thought he shouldn't take. But that moment didn't start there. To understand what really happened that October afternoon, and what the Duke did next that no one expected, you have to go back 9 years, to a wound that had never properly healed. If you've ever been written off by someone who should have known better, stay with this story. And if you're new here, hit subscribe, because this is exactly the kind of moment we were built to tell. In 1964, John Wayne was the most powerful man in Hollywood westerns. He had been for 20 years. His films had grossed hundreds of millions of dollars. His face was synonymous with the American hero, honest, principled, unbreakable. Directors called him first. Studios built franchises around him. When John Wayne played a cowboy, audiences believed in cowboys. Then something arrived from Italy that Wayne had no word for. Sergio Leone's spaghetti westerns were crossing the Atlantic, and with them came a lean, unknown California actor named Clint Eastwood, playing a character with no name, no loyalty, no moral code, and no interest in being anyone's hero. He squinted into the sun, spoke in short sentences, and shot men without ceremony. No flag, no speech, no redemption arc. Just a poncho, a cigar, and a revolver. And American audiences went completely insane for it. Wayne watched from a distance and felt something he wasn't accustomed to feeling: confusion, then irritation, then something that sat closer to fear than he ever would have admitted out loud. By 1971, when Clint released Dirty Harry and Play Misty for Me in the same calendar year, one a box office phenomenon, the other a critical success, Wayne was giving interviews with real edge in his voice. He told a reporter from the Los Angeles Times that the new anti-hero films were, in his words, nihilism dressed up as authenticity. He didn't say Clint's name. He didn't have to. Everyone in Hollywood knew exactly who he meant. What Wayne never said publicly, what he only admitted years later in private, was that the wound wasn't really about movies at all. It was about replacement. Directors who had built careers alongside Wayne were now calling Clint first. Studios that had handed Wayne creative control without question were now greenlighting Eastwood projects with the same deference. At 66 years old, Wayne could feel the ground shifting beneath him, and no amount of box office history could stop it. He had bitten his tongue for 9 years. He had swallowed the frustration in interviews, buried it in production schedules, convinced himself it didn't matter. But on that Saturday morning in October 1973, when his friend Jerry pointed across the range and said quietly, "That's Eastwood over there, the High Plains drifter guy," the 9 years of patience ran out in about 4 seconds, and John Wayne started walking. What John Wayne didn't know, what almost nobody at the Ventura Sporting Club knew that Saturday, was who Clint Eastwood actually was before the cameras ever found him. In 1951, a 21-year-old kid from Oakland, California, reported to Fort Ord for U.S. Army service. Lean, quiet, unremarkable on paper. His official assignment was swimming instructor. But something happened during those 2 years at Fort Ord that had nothing to do with water. The Army ran a marksmanship program, competitive, rigorous, and completely unforgiving. Clint entered it not because anyone ordered him to, but because something about the discipline pulled at him. The stillness of it, the way the world went completely silent the moment you lined up a shot. He practiced before dawn, after dinner, on weekends when other men were sleeping in. He borrowed extra range time. He wore the grips of his standard-issue revolver smooth from repetition. In 1952, he entered the All-Army Pistol Championship. 2,000 competitors from bases and branches across the entire United States military. He placed third out of 2,000, using standard-issue equipment, while the men who finished above him carried custom competition rigs built specifically for that event. The officer running the marksmanship program, a captain named R.W. Patterson, wrote in his official evaluation, "Eastwood possesses exceptional natural control under pressure, rare quality in a man this age." Clint never mentioned it publicly, not once. Not in interviews, not on set, not to journalists who spent entire afternoons looking for angles. Shooting was private, one of the only things in his life that belonged entirely to him and nobody else. When he joined the Ventura Sporting Club 5 years before that October morning, he signed the membership log as a regular member. No history offered, no record volunteered. The club's rangemaster, Frank, had watched him over those 5 years. Frank had seen hundreds of shooters come through that range. He had never once told Clint what he thought. That wasn't Frank's way. But he had told his wife something simple after watching Clint one quiet Tuesday evening. That man shoots like the gun is part of his hand. None of that history was visible to Wayne as he crossed the range with his jaw set and his friends behind him. All he saw was an actor, a costume, a squint. And that was the most expensive mistake John Wayne ever made. If you're new here, subscribe. We find the stories that history almost forgot. Frank set up 2 fresh bullseye targets at 50 yards and walked back without a word. The crowd had grown to over 30 people by then, drawn from the competition range by the kind of electric tension that pulls men across a field without them quite knowing why. Some of them were Wayne's friends. Some were regular club members who had never spoken 2 words to either man. All of them understood, without being told, that what was about to happen was not a friendly Saturday exhibition anymore. Wayne went first. He walked to the firing line with the unhurried confidence of a man who had been doing this since before Clint Eastwood was old enough to drive. His revolver was championship grade, a custom Colt .45 with hand-engraved barrel and fitted grips that had been built specifically for competition. He loaded 6 rounds without looking down, stepped to the line, raised the weapon in one smooth motion, arm extended wide and rock steady, remarkable for a 66-year-old man, and fired. The crack split the October air. Wayne didn't wait to check the result. He adjusted, breathed, fired again. 6 shots in under 20 seconds, controlled, experienced. The rhythm of a man who had stood on that line 1,000 times before. He lowered the revolver and stepped back, face unreadable, eyes already moving to Clint. Frank walked the 50 yards, examined the target, turned around. 5 in the bullseye, 1 just outside, 8-inch grouping, 54 out of 60. The crowd erupted. 54 out of 60 at 50 yards with a revolver was championship-level shooting by any standard in the world. Several men didn't even look at Clint. As far as they were concerned, it was already over. Wayne's voice cut across the noise. "Your turn, kid." Clint walked to the line. His heart was hitting harder than he wanted. He could feel every pair of eyes on his back. He opened the cylinder of his old Colt single-action Army. 15 years old, scratched leather case, standard equipment. The same grade of weapon he had carried at Fort Ord in 1952. He loaded 6 rounds, closed the cylinder. He breathed in through his nose, out through his mouth. Slow. The way Captain Patterson had taught him 21 years ago on a different range in a different life. The crowd behind him, Wayne's presence, the weight of 30 opinions. All of it faded back until there was nothing left but the gun, the target, and 50 yards of still California air. He raised the revolver, sights aligned, breath half out, held, and squeezed. The Colt kicked. He did not look. Muscle memory moved his arm. Breathe, adjust, squeeze. Again. The rhythm was not performance. It was something older and quieter than that. Bang, 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 bang. 6 shots. He lowered the weapon. His arm was completely steady. Frank walked the 50 yards. The crowd was so silent that 3 men later said they could hear the gravel shifting under Frank's boots. He reached the target, leaned in close, straightened up slowly. And when he turned around, the expression on his weathered face was not the polite acknowledgement of a decent score. It was genuine disbelief. 6 shots, all 6 in the bullseye. 4-inch grouping, 60 out of 60, perfect score. Nobody moved. Then the range exploded. Cheering, groaning, money-changing hands, a woman named Maureen clapping with both arms raised above her head. And John Wayne stood completely still, staring at a target that his 20 years of championship shooting had never once produced. His mouth was open, just slightly, just enough. Clint did not celebrate. He did not raise his arm. He did not turn to the crowd. He did not look at Wayne with satisfaction or relief or anything resembling triumph. He accepted the target from Frank with a single nod, set it on the table beside his gun case, and began unloading his revolver with the same quiet efficiency he had loaded it with. Like a man finishing a task, like a man who had simply done what he came to do. Wayne's voice came from behind him, low and rough, the confidence stripped out of it. That was luck. The crowd went still again. Jerry put a hand on Wayne's arm. Wayne shook it off. "Had to be," Wayne continued, his voice harder now, the way a man gets hard when he knows he is already wrong and cannot stop himself. "Nobody walks up cold and shoots perfect at 50 yards. Nobody." Clint finished unloading, set the revolver down. Then he turned, not quickly, not dramatically, just turned the way a man turns when he has already decided exactly what he is going to say and has no urgency about saying it. "Nobody who makes films you don't like," Clint said quietly. "That's what you mean." Wayne's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. "I want you to understand something, Mr. Wayne." Clint stepped closer, close enough that his voice dropped, close enough that only the front row of the crowd could hear every word. "I didn't come here today to prove anything to you. I came here because this is the one place where everything goes quiet. But you decided before I ever touched that gun what I was worth. You judged the man by the movies and missed the man entirely." The crowd was motionless. "I'm not your enemy," Clint continued. "I grew up watching your films. True grit is one of the finest things this industry has ever produced. I'm not trying to tear down what you built. I'm trying to add to it. Tell different stories about the same country you love." Something moved behind Wayne's eyes. The defensive anger, 9 years of it, fell away slowly, the way a heavy coat slides off tired shoulders. What replaced it was older and quieter. Recognition. And something that looked, from where the crowd stood, very much like shame. Then John Wayne did something that 30 witnesses never forgot for the rest of their lives. He extended his hand. "You can shoot," he said. "No condition, no qualifier. That was the finest shooting I have ever personally witnessed. And I was wrong about you, Eastwood. Not just today, long before today. Clint looked at the hand for one breath, then he took it. That's the kind of story we tell here every week. If you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time. Hit that button and stay with us. It was at that exact moment that a silver-haired man stepped forward from the back of the crowd. He was in his late 60s, straight-backed, with the quiet authority of someone who had spent a lifetime making decisions that mattered. His name was Colonel R.W. Patterson, retired U.S. Army, former head of the marksmanship training program at Fort Ord, California. He had been standing at the edge of the crowd for the last 20 minutes, watching everything without saying a word. He looked at Wayne with calm, level eyes. "Duke, do you know where this young man finished in the All-Army Pistol Championship in 1952? Out of 2,000 military competitors from every base and branch in the United States?" Wayne said nothing. "Third place," Patterson said, addressing the crowd now, his voice carrying the full length of the range. "Third place, using standard-issue equipment, while every man who finished above him was shooting custom competition rigs. I ran that program. I wrote his evaluation myself." He paused. "I said then that Clint Eastwood possessed the rarest quality in any competitive shooter, absolute composure under maximum pressure. 21 years later, he just proved I was right." Jerry pulled at his mustache. Tom stared at his boots. Patterson turned back to Wayne, his tone carrying no malice, only the plain, undecorated weight of fact. "You challenged a man you had already decided was beneath you. He responded not with anger, but with excellence. And then he offered you his hand instead of his contempt." He let that sit for a moment. "That is the mark of a man who has nothing left to prove." Wayne stood quietly for a long moment. Then he nodded once, slowly, fully, the way a man nods when he has run completely out of argument. 4 days later, on a Tuesday morning, Clint's phone rang, and the voice on the other end said 7 words he never expected to hear. "Eastwood, this is Wayne. I owe you." Wayne called to apologize, properly, privately, without an audience. He told Clint that he had been carrying a fear for 9 years that he had mistaken for conviction. That the industry was changing around him, and instead of accepting it with grace, he had aimed that fear at the man who represented what was coming next. His voice was quieter on the phone than it had ever been in person. The swagger was gone. What was left was just a man, tired and honest, doing the harder thing. "I still don't love your dark westerns," Wayne admitted. "Probably never will. But I was wrong to call them invalid, and I was wrong about you." They met at the Ventura Sporting Club twice more before Wayne's health began to decline. No competition, no audience. Just 2 men who had nearly become permanent enemies, shooting side by side in the California afternoon. The Duke teaching Clint fast-draw techniques from the 1950s, Clint showing Wayne precision methods from Fort Ord. 2 different visions of the same American West, standing at the same firing line. Wayne died in June 1979, lung cancer. Clint attended privately and said nothing to the press. The target from that perfect score, 60 out of 60, 4-inch grouping at 50 yards, hung framed in Clint Eastwood's home office for decades afterward. Not as a trophy, as a reminder that excellence speaks louder than argument, that grace is stronger than revenge, and that the most powerful thing a man can do when someone publicly calls him nothing is quietly prove them wrong and then offer them his hand anyway. Some men spend their whole lives trying to win. The rare ones already know something better, that how you win is the only part that lasts. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And subscribe, because we have dozens more just like this one, and we don't want you to miss a single one.